Well, my story, I guess, would begin in 1984 when I was born. My mother started getting sick, and nobody knew why, really. She had been using drugs off and on throughout that time. My dad said, listen, Liz, you really need to go get yourself checked out. So it was 1986, and she went down to the free clinic, got her HIV test, and 2 weeks later, it came back positive. I was downstairs playing in the community playground in the sandbox, and all of a sudden, I remember parents coming and, it was very, with worried looks on their faces, coming and taking their kids away. And before I knew it, I was in the sandbox alone. That was my first memory of what AIDS was, and I think that's, ultimately the beginning of, my story and dealing with HIV. I was tested the following day, and then 2 weeks later, it was found out that I was HIV positive as well, because they didn't have medicine in 1986 to treat it, and they were just kind of seeing how long I was going to live. My mother lived probably another year and a half before she succumbed to AIDS-related illnesses. And they told my dad at that point, they said, Christina won't live to the age of 10, with how things are going right now. We just don't know how to treat it yet. When I was about 5, they started me on meds. At that point, it was when I really kind of knew I had HIV, because I asked my dad, I said, why do I have to take this medicine? Every day that I lived past the age of 10, I always felt like I was on borrowed time, because even though I was on medicine, I was still getting sicker and sicker, as time went on. I was just thankful for being alive at that point, because my dad always raised me. He said, never feel sorry for yourself, because at some point there's always somewhere else in the world that has it worse off than you, and that would be grateful to be in the situation that you're in. So that gave me perspective, and something I tried to keep throughout my childhood. When I was about 12, I was really very, very sick. I had a few seizures in that year. I had pneumonia several times that year. I was in a coma for 3 days. I was convinced that, I was on my deathbed, and that any day now would be it. But they came out with protease inhibitors in 1996. That was kind of a turning point for me. I started getting healthier. I started putting on a little bit of weight. I was starting to turn into a young woman. A huge moment for me was obviously graduating high school. I made it through my senior year. I made it through high school, which is what a lot of seniors feel at that point. Not only was I alive in there, but I was also so much healthier than I had been in such a long time. Having the option and the opportunity to, graduate and then go off to college was just something that I never thought I would live to do. I think for the first time, I was really optimistic that I would live to maybe see a cure one day. So when I first found out I was pregnant, I was really happy, but a big part of me was also terrified. I was on medication during my pregnancy, and I had medication throughout the labor process, and my child would be on medicine for the first 6 weeks of life, that there's a less than 1% chance that he would contract HIV. But that's still not a 0% chance. So there was that slight little bit of chance, and I still had that worry all throughout my pregnancy. They did a couple tests right when he was born, another test 2 weeks after he was born, another test a month after he was born, and another test 4 months after he was born. He doesn't have HIV. For me, that was just such a relief to be able to have a child that doesn't have to worry about what I worried about when I was growing up. I had a dream about my dad, and because he had passed away a couple years beforehand, and about my dad and my mother, and I finally understood what it must have felt like to be responsible for this little tiny life, and then all of a sudden realize that not only do you have this horrible thing, but you've also passed on to your kid. I had this dream that was so vivid, that my parents were there, and that they got to meet Hayden, and my son, and they were very, very proud. Just thinking about everything that's changed in just 26 years, it's just phenomenal. I've always been the face of HIV. People just didn't see it before.